All right, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of FathersFyre. My name's Jody Sedrick, and as you know, every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And, it's been so good to be back home. As you guys know from last week's episode, I escaped to LA to spend a weekend on the sailboat just by myself. It was really weird to just be by myself, but I specifically went with the purpose to write my second book about faith. And I tell you, it was a great experience to just escape, to have a day where I could meditate, ponder, go for a walk, go on the beach, come back, write, ponder, do a little pray. It just was an amazing experience of, 2 days of just really trying to tap in on the subject of faith. And so it's really opportune that today we have the opportunity to visit with a good friend that I recently met. His name is James Kelso. He is a musician. He is a father. He's adopted. And so I'm really excited to have James on. Welcome. I'm super excited to have a conversation with you. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jody. It's been a crazy day with a family of 7, but it's been a really good day. So I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm excited to chat with you.
Well, 7 is a great number, man. It's like I have 6 and you one up me.
No. I don't have 7 kids. We have a family of 7. No, I don't think I could. No, I don't think I could do 7 kids. I don't think I'm man enough for that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when Judy and I were first having our kids, the first one was a big step for us. We waited 4 years before we had our oldest son, Devin. And it was great for us. I mean, we had time just to really tap into each other and learn each other's nuances and quirks. And it was a great experience. And the timing was really good. And I remember, when we were debating to have that second one, 3 years later, she goes, "What's it going to be like having 2?" I go, "You know what? It's going to be different." And then, when it came to the third one, I go, "You're not even going to notice. What's one more?"
Yeah. Everybody always told me when you go from 3 to 4, there's already so much noise, you don't notice any difference. That wasn't my experience. It got exponentially louder in our house.
That's our house. Our house is extremely loud. In fact, I remember the first time my third son, Zane's girlfriend, came over and she's just watching the chaos in our house with all the kids. She's like, "Wow, you guys are really crazy."
Yeah. We've had similar experiences with one of my older boys' girlfriend. He told me, he said, "I think she just really likes being over here because we're just always so loud and we're just always having fun and making a bunch of racket. And she just really enjoys that." And well, yeah, we do too.
Yeah, and everything, I'm sure it's the same way in your house, but everything in my house is a competition. and it tends to draw out the very aggressive side. In fact, I don't know if you know the game. Do you know the game Spoons?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we were playing.
We've done it some tabletops playing Spoons. Yeah.
Well, we actually were playing. We were playing Extreme Spoons, and so we're down in our basement, and the idea behind Extreme Spoons is we're all down in the basement, but the spoons are all up the stairs. So you end up with 7, 8 people trying to climb up the stairs to get the spoons. This one time, man, my brother-in-law and my son Christian, they had the same spoon and they literally were like yanking, pulling, trying to get the spoon. And we ended up having to go to the hospital because the spoon ripped right through his hand and we had to go get like 8 stitches.
That's a serious game of spoons now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, when I say life, life with kids is fun. It's an adventure. It's challenging. But boy, it'll sure make you laugh if you have the right spirit. So,
yeah, that's our house is very much, I wouldn't say we're necessarily a super competitive family. We're a very musical family. We have some that are athletes and competitive and things, but probably the biggest thing, they're just a bunch of clowns. Like, I'm kind of a clown. I'm kind of a goofball. And essentially we just sit around dinner at our house it's a constant roast fest where everyone's roasting everyone, and we just laugh and laugh, and it's so much fun. Everybody knows everybody's got each other's back, and it's all in good fun. And it's dinner time's a lot of fun at our house.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about, you have 4 kids, and
5
then
now, actually.
5 now, right? Well,
yeah,
so I was gonna say 4 kids, and then you adopted one. And I'm like you. I'm like, I just have 6 kids. But I think a lot of people, one of the weird things to me is like when I tell people that we've adopted, they're like, "Oh man, what an amazing thing!" I'm like, "What are you talking about? They're just my kids, right?"
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about you and your wife's journey to adopt, because I think a lot of people they wrestle with whether they should adopt. They're outside looking in. Why did you do that? I get asked that a lot. So what was your and your wife's experience, going through that process?
Oh man. I can give you the story of how we got there. I suppose we can start there. So ours was a little different in that we had 4 boys. Never wanted a little girl because I didn't feel that I was equipped to raise a little girl. We were with our 4th. She grew up with 4 brothers, only girl. And so she knew boys. She was a boy mom. And I was frankly scared to have a girl. So for our 4th, we were both hoping for a boy. We got a boy. We had a house full of boys.
So let me interrupt you real quick, because I think that what you said there is important. Why were you afraid to have a girl?
Because I did not grow up in a very healthy home, and I was exposed to pornography really young, and I became sexually active really young, and God's given me deliverance from so much, but there was just this. I knew that my view of sexuality and women, it was just not right. And so I was afraid, like, what if I mean, I wasn't worried about doing anything inappropriate. It wasn't anything like that. I just was like, I'm just afraid I won't know what to do with a little girl. Like and I got saved when I was in my early 20s, and God began to transform my heart and my mind. But there was a deep fear in me that, man, if I had a little girl, I just wouldn't know how to treat her right. I wouldn't know how to lead her well.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I want to come back. I have some thoughts about that, but let's continue with their story, because I think that's actually, I'm just going to address it right now, because I think one of the things that I think a lot of men struggle with is, what am I going to do with the girl? I know to be rough and tumbly with the boy, and I know all that stuff. And what I've come to the conclusion is how we as men treat and honor our wife first, and how we treat our daughters really sets a stage for them feeling loved and precious and worthy of love. And so I can understand being a little concerned about that, right? Especially not having had that experience. And I was really blessed. My dad was phenomenal with my mom. In fact, we knew as kids that mom was preeminent in the house.
Yeah.
In fact, I've only seen my dad really lose it once, when one of my brothers really got disrespectful with my mom, and he basically pushed him against the wall. He said, "You will never, ever talk to my sweetheart like that again."
Yeah.
He goes, she's your mom, but she's my sweetheart, and she is preeminent. And I just love that. And so I can appreciate the honesty of going, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with the girl.
Yeah. It was, It was definitely not anything. Yeah. So no plans to ever have a little girl. We had a crazy house full of boys. It was loud. They were. It was fun, but we were still in that stage where there were more work than fun, and so no desire to have a fifth. Like when my wife said I want to have a fourth, I said, yeah, okay, that's great. We'll have a fourth, but like we're making surgically sure that we cannot have five because I'm not having five kids. So we had made up our mind, no more kids. And so God had to speak pretty clearly. So we were at church. You said a musician. And so I was on staff as a worship leader at the time. And I was on stage and I was otherwise occupied with what was happening. And I wasn't listening to the announcements. Well, apparently someone said during the announcements, it was Sanctity of Your Life Sunday. They were talking about all the ways that you can serve vulnerable children. We had never spoken about foster care ever. And the Lord spoke to my wife's heart and said, you need to become a foster family. I didn't hear the announcement. 20 minutes later during the message, the pastor says, and these are ways you can minister to vulnerable families. And he mentioned foster care and clear as a bell. It wasn't audible, but in my heart, it might as well have been clear might as well have been audible. The Lord said, when you get home, you're gonna have a conversation with your wife about foster care. And I said, oh, okay. So we have two services. So I got home a couple hours later than her. And she sat on this very couch, her arms folded like this. And she said, honey, we need to talk. I said, yeah, honey, what's on your mind? And she said, we need to become a foster family. I said, yeah, I know. So we started that journey. We became a foster family, went through the classes where they prepare you for the worst imaginable horrors. And I remember walking through that whole thing thinking, if I didn't know we were supposed to endure this, and that sounds terrible. That sounds really bad, like it's all about us. But when you have a healthy family, and you're saying, I'm going to bring someone into my family that's been through deep trauma, and it's going to affect everyone in the family. It's not a cost. You want to count that cost, right? And so going through those classes, it was like, man, this is heavy stuff, but we're going to do it because God's called us to it. So, and everybody would say, hey, you guys going to adopt? And no, we're not going to adopt. We have 4 kids. We don't need more kids, but God's just called us to foster for a while. And then a little while later, a friend of mine messaged me from Canada, kind of like a little sister to me. She said, hey, I had 3 dreams in 3 nights that you're going to adopt a little girl. Are you going to adopt a little girl? And I just listened back to that messages on Facebook Messenger. I listened back to the audio just a month ago because I had forgotten this. And I'm like, okay, I don't quite know what to say to that. We have no plans to adopt. I got 4 kids. Well, fast forward about 2 more years and well, let me back up. Right around that, a little bit before that time, I'm over at a friend's house, we're watching a football game, and his daughter climbs up into my lap. This is not a little girl that I knew very well, just that she's probably 8 years old. She climbs up in my lap and she puts her head right here. She's watching the TV in front of me, and she's just stretched out on this, big Chase lounger. And I just, it was like a lightning bolt hit my heart. Like, I don't know what this is, but this feels very different than having one of my boys in my lap. And I'm a very physical touch. Like I hug, and I've always hugged and kissed my boys, and I'm very physically affectionate with them. And man, I just wanted to wrap this little girl up and just hug her. And I thought, I don't know what this is, but this is significant. So much so that we went home that night and I told my wife, I said, I don't know what God did in my heart tonight, but he did something when she sat in my lap. So fast forward, we become foster family. No, we're not planning to adopt. A couple years later, I find everywhere I go, every time I see a little girl, it's just like, hi, how are you? What's your, and it's like, I'm just drawn to these little girls. And there was a tenderness in my heart that never used to be there. And one day my wife and we were headed to Wisconsin for a weekend away. And God often speaks to us during these trips. And I'll never forget, I looked over at her in the passenger seat and I said, honey, I think we're supposed to adopt. And I think we're supposed to adopt a little girl. And she said, yeah, I've known for a couple of months now. I said, okay, then. All right. So then it was just decided, like, okay, where's my daughter? And we had a little girl with us, fostered her for 8 months or so. And we thought we were going to adopt. We said we'd like to, but my wife and I both agreed the only thing that would be better is if she ended up with a sibling. And in the end, she ended up with a sibling, and it broke us as a family. Like it so many tears, devastating for my boys. And then we waited another year, and by this time, this is about 7 year span, right? From not ever wanting a little girl to now, I'm like, God, where is my daughter? I want to meet my daughter so much. Like I can't even express this sense of love and longing I had for this little girl that I hadn't met. And I'm like, Lord, when do I get to meet her? Is she 1? Is she 12? Has she been born yet? We had no idea. And so last August, we were on vacation in Acadia, Maine, and we were hiking up a mountain, and we got a phone call. We have a little 7-year-old girl needs a home, and would you consider having her come to your home? And so we hadn't included the boys in this whole decision-making process, praying through all of this as a family. And so we just stopped there on the mountain and we prayed as a family. What do you guys think? Do we say yes? And as a family, we felt like God was saying yes. And so we called and said, yeah, we'll adopt her. And the lady's like, well, hold on a second, slow down. Do you want to meet her first? And yeah, that's fine. But, we at that point, we made up our mind. We knew that she was supposed to be our little girl. And so she came to live with us in August, and we were not allowed to tell her for 6 months that we were going to adopt. She's had a pretty tough go of things up until coming to us, and they were concerned that we might change our mind. And so finally in January, they let us tell her. And we knew that it wouldn't be a Hallmark moment. Everybody thinks, oh gosh, that had to have been so special. It's like, no, this is traumatic to tell a little girl she's never going to be that last name she's not going to be that anymore. She's going to be this. And even though she wanted to be in our family and she loved us, we knew that conversation was going to be joyful and painful at the same time. And it was, but we told her, and we got through those bumps, and we adopted in April, and she feels like she's been here all along. She's got some trauma that make days hard sometimes, but our family feels complete now. When even before we knew we were going to adopt, my wife would get into the van and she would tell me this, and I'd get a little irritated. She'd say, James, all the kids got in the van, and I looked back and I saw all 4, and I thought, where's the other one? And then I'm like, wait, they're all here. That happened to her several times. Like, she'd walk into a room and see all 4 boys sitting in there and go, where's the other one? Oh, wait, they're all here. And so finally now our family feels like we're all here. I'm hoping we're all here. I'm not sure I'm ready to adopt anymore. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say I won't. That's what God tells you to do it.
There's so many things to unpack in that. First of all, that God prepared your heart, right? Because I know when we had a very distinct experience, a prompting, a sign from God, dream. My wife had a dream, and then she went to Haiti, and the dream played out exactly like her dream. And so from the very beginning, we knew once we got that impression that we were going to adopt. But I love the fact that you included your boys, right? I think that is so critical. I think a lot of times couples, husbands and wife, they miss the opportunity to include their children in family discussions and family decisions. Because as you have found out and will continue to find out, that the ripple effects of bringing that little girl into your home, while beautiful, also is going to be very straining at times. And I think a lot of times, especially when we were first adopting, it's easy to get so focused on the new children into your home that you have to be very mindful that you're not neglecting the children that are your biological children, and recognize that the trauma that they're bringing into your home, while it's not their fault, is going to affect your other children.
Yeah.
Right. Because absolutely. I think about, my son, he was so excited to have a brother that would be close to his age. And it took us 3 years to finally get him to come into our home. And so that was 3 more years of trauma and experiences in the orphanage and all these things that were compounding in our adopted son's experience and coming into our home. And, he emotionally was behind where he should have been as a 9-year-old boy. Right. And to have that emotional difference was extremely obvious in our home. And it was extremely impactful, because here he was hopeful that he was going to have somebody that he could relate to, but was really about 4 years behind him. And that was really tough. And the same with my daughter. I mean, she was behind as well. And not to mention, the trauma that they went through and coming, not only being adopted, but coming to a new country, learning a new language, and, it's interesting how, you talk about, when you guys decided to be foster parents, you go through the classes just like we did as adopted parents. And I remember in fact, there's only 2 lessons I remember about that whole 6-week class, 8-week class that we had to take. And one was the movie that we had to watch. And it was so depressing and heart-wrenching.
You're talking about Removed?
Yeah. And I just was like, I'm driving home and I'm like, what, do they not want us to adopt?
Right.
I'm like, what's the purpose of this? Right. And I made this statement, and I've shared this before. I made this statement that I don't understand, because in love, all things are possible. But what I came to realize is that love is hard.
Yeah.
It's deep, lasting, eternal love is something that you have to fight for and lean into, and you have to be willing to forgive yourself as well as forgive the kid, and just work through that. I really came to realize that love is difficult, especially when you don't want to be loved on the outside, but on the inside, you're yearning to be loved. You're hoping to be loved. You're praying that this family is going to bring you into their home and be everything that you hope for. But at the same time, you're putting this wall up because you're afraid you're going to be disappointed again.
Yeah.
And we as adoptive and foster parents get to be the punching bag. We get to be the one that carries the cross. And that can be very discouraging at times, especially when you're trying to open your heart and you're trying to open your home You're trying to take care of all of your kids' hearts and make sure that they're all mended and taken care of, and that you're given the proper time. But one of the challenging things, especially with adoptive and foster kids, is, they have that wall up, and it requires you to lean into that love. It's like so many times, and you probably experienced this, so many times you want to react a certain way.
Yeah.
But if you will heed that little voice that's in your head and your heart going, no, 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 don't do this. And it's exactly opposite of what you want to do.
Right.
And if you will heed that voice, it is exactly what your kid needs. Yeah. And it's also exactly what you need.
Yeah. I've talked a lot about, maybe you've seen some of the things on TikTok about, we had one of our sons is extremely strong-willed, but we went through 7 years of hell with him. We're on the other side of it now, and he is an incredible kid, and our relationship is strong. He's 14. But one of the things that you realize, is that you can be parenting in first gear with most of your kids, and you can get away with it because their personalities will just deal, right? They'll just deal with it. When you're grumpy, when you're short-tempered, they'll just deal with it. A strong-willed kid will not. And a kid who's been through trauma will not. And so it's like having a child that's been through some kind of trauma, or a strong-willed kid, it really reveals what is in our hearts. Like you can go out in public and you can be awesome, and people can think you're awesome, and then you can go home and be the biggest creep to your family. And having a foster child or strong-willed child, it's like a mirror. It's like a mirror. You can't get away from what's really inside your cup, because man, it comes spilling out on the days that you're exhausted and beat down, and yeah, it'll make a parent out of you like nothing else.
Yeah, I have always been very proud to be a good father, right? And with admittedly some arrogance, right? I'm like, I'm a good dad, I'm doing everything. But it wasn't until I had a kid with trauma that I was able to see the true flaws that Jody had. Mm-hmm. That when he was under pressure, that the ugly could creep up and creep out. And I didn't like it.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I know my kids didn't like it. My kids didn't know. And thankfully I remember this one experience with my dad, and I was young. I was probably 10 or something. I don't even remember what happened, but I remember my dad losing his cool. I mean, he just verbally lost it. Nobody, there's no physical abuse or anything like that, but he verbally lost it. And he left. He slammed the door and left, and he was gone for hours. And finally, my mom said, "Kids, I need you boys to go to bed." So we said prayers, and Mom tucked us in, and we went to bed. And I'm sitting there laying in my bed, just, my heart broken for what I did and what happened in the family and stuff. And I'll never forget that amidst these thoughts, I heard the door open and close, and my dad walked down the hallway and opened the door, and he sat down next to me on the bed. And he said, "Son, I want you to know that I love you." And I'm deeply, deeply sorry about what happened tonight because I was not the father that I want to be and I aspire to be, and I will work to be better. Will you forgive me? And so having that model has been a great blessing to me, in those really trying times, because I've tried to have that kind of humility with my kids when I haven't been at my best. I tell my kids all the time, I am not a perfect father. And they're like, yeah, Dad, we know. No, I'm not a perfect father, but I do work and strive to love you perfectly. And through that process, we will develop a love that will tie us together. Right. I just am a firm believer of that. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to work at it.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a habit of quoting things and attributing them to people who maybe didn't actually say them, but I believe it was Billy Graham's kids were asked if they could change anything about their childhood, what would they change? And if I got this correct, I believe it was them. They said, "I wish I would have seen my parents fight, because when I got married, every time I disagreed with my spouse, I thought there was something wrong. We were in danger. And I didn't know what it looked like to have healthy conflict. So I wish my parents would have fought in front of us." And that, when I heard that, that resonated so deeply with me. And with my boys, I've got a very, like I said, a very dysfunctional experience up until I met the Lord when I was 21. And so I never really knew how to be a dad. And but I'm thankful that God gave me this sense in my heart that there was value in them seeing me fail, and then seeing me take responsibility and put my relationship with them, over maybe winning or getting my way. And so I'm thankful that amid all the mistakes that I made, there's just always been this sense that, like, just like Billy Graham's kids, like my kids are not, because I make so many mistakes and I apologize so often. My kids are not going to grow up and wonder what it looks like to walk into your kids and say, "Hey, I blew it today. Hey, when I came through the door and you didn't have your chores done, I should have addressed you, but I shouldn't have addressed you that way. And I'm sorry. Will you forgive me?" My kids will never wonder what it should look like to apologize to their kids. And that always gave me a great sense of hope in those moments, especially in those 7 years with my son Matthew, where it was so hard, because it's like, oh, man, I feel like I'm not getting any of this right. And I'm trying all the same things I tried with all my other kids, and none of them are working. And at the end of the day, just always being so thankful that, okay, I can apologize. And like for him, one of the challenges for us was that he struggled to apologize until I would. And so one of the things that was really hard for me to learn was that I had to find something small, even if I had held my cool for the entire 3-hour tantrum, if I let my tone get a little bit growly at one point in time, if I would go back and say, when we were talking about that thing, I got kind of intense with my voice, and I would forgive me for that. And that would always soften his heart. And within 5-10 minutes, he'd say, "I'm sorry too, Dad. I'm sorry." And I don't know. I was just always thankful that I think the value in screwing it up and saying I'm sorry to our kids, I don't know if we really understand how valuable it is. How valuable that is. I'm not saying you can abuse your kids, you can yell and scream at your kids, just tell them you're sorry, I'm sorry every day. Not that. Of course not that. But man, when I walk through the door and I'm short with their mom, and they see that, and then I'm short with them, and then we sit down at the dinner table, and I just say, guys, I came to the door and I was frustrated about, all the stuff that wasn't done, and I was frustrated with mom because she did all this, but I didn't handle any of that correctly. And they'll listen to me apologize to their mom. I'll of course make that apology before I make my apology to them. And I don't know, Jody, I just feel like, man, what is life but this rhythm? If you're a Christ follower, you live your life out where I'm aspiring to live surrendered to Jesus, but then I don't. And I either have to decide now in my shame, do I walk the other way, or do I say, I'm sorry, Lord, I want to receive your grace, and I want to start moving forward again. I mean, that is all of life. It's every day. It's the man who still struggles with anger today, but 20 years ago he was beating his kids, and he was just maybe killing people, but God's taken him through this process of redemption and holiness. And every step along the way, it's a constant rhythm of failure and recognition of what we did, and repentance and growth. And so I don't know, I'm rambling here, but I just feel so strongly about this. And I want other fathers to know, like, man, there is value in every single mistake you make with your kids. If you process through that mistake with your kids and you put it into the context of the gospel and God's grace and his forgiveness and the need to repent and make the decision to change, I feel like my kids learn as much, if not more, than as they do on the days when I come home and I'm in a great spot.
I love the imagery of the rhythm of life. Like you, I have a musical family. My kids, when my oldest son is home, the kids around the piano and they're singing together. And there's a rhythm. There's a downbeat, there's a high beat, and sometimes we're out of sync with each other. But as we are authentically honest with ourselves and go, you know what, I was not the best I should have been or could have been at that moment, but I'm going to get back in sync with you so that we as a family can be in rhythm, so that there's a beautiful harmony of love and unity. And I think that's really what God is trying to get all of us to do in our families, is to figure out what is the rhythm for our family. What is it that makes us beautiful? And each of us have such different personalities and different ways to approach it. And I mean, we need to have a part two, because parenting different kids differently, and there's so many different dynamics. And so it's like God's trying to orchestrate this miracle within your family to bring this rhythm and harmony and beauty and pull everybody into concert, so that we truly are one as a family, and that is the goal. So I want to thank you so much. I mean, I'm going to go back and listen to this, because it's good for me to talk to another fellow brother who's gone through similar things. And I really do want to have you for a round two, because there's so much left unsaid and left to explore. So I want to thank you for your time tonight. In closing, for tonight, is there any one or two things that you think are absolutely pivotal for a dad to do in his home?
Wow. Yes. point your kids to Jesus, and live transparently in front of them, because every kid, boys especially, they're all asking the same question. Do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes? They're asking me, they're asking their friends, they're asking the world. Do I have what it takes? And when they look at their dad, most kids, they think dad's got what it takes. Dad's got what it takes. He's strong enough. People respect him. And we've all experienced those people in our lives where we have a misguided perception of who they are, because we see them on a Sunday morning, we see them at their best, and we think, yeah, guy's got it together. She's got it together. And for our kids to be able to see us and see us transparently fail at life and then get back up and struggle. We could get into all kinds of things with this, but I've dealt with anxiety in my life. But I'm a public speaker. I'm a performer. I get on stage and I crack jokes and I sing songs and I tell stories, and I look like I am ultimately comfortable in front of people. But some days, anxiety is just about crippling. And being transparent about with my boys and my daughter about that stuff, I think it answers the question, do I have what it takes? Because they can see, wait a second, this guy who I feel like has what it takes, he's got a lot of flaws, but God's still using him, and he's still making an impact in people's lives, and his life still matters. And so, yeah, I would say pointing people to Jesus and pointing your kids to Jesus and just letting them see the real you in every way. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for giving me of your time. This has been a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Guys that are listening, gals, because we have gals that listen to, please go out to TikTok and Instagram, connect with James. It's at James Kelso Music. That's on Instagram and TikTok, and he also has a YouTube channel. So go check him out. I'm telling you, go tap into his TikTok. Very heartfelt, very thought-provoking messages that he shares about being a father, about being a believer in Christ, and just trying to have a connection and a relationship with God, our Heavenly Father. And it's just amazing. So go connect with them. James, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. And guys, we will check you same time, same bat channel, just next week, right here on FathersFyre. See ya!